Lovely.
And I'll put this on Facebook as well. Facebook. So give me a minute, I'll just organise this. Okay, I've just got to get this recording thing ready. So here it is, go live. Okay, good morning, ladies. Oh, hello, Lou. Welcome.
Hi.
So this is our second lesson in the Seniors Week series of Aging with Ease and Grace. So this morning we're going to be doing a lesson looking at rotation. Yesterday we did a lesson looking at flexion extension, and I spoke to you about how our movement, we're designed to move in a spiral pattern. We have a divine design, if you like to say that. We have it's a mathematical formula that enables us to move well in a spiral pattern. And when we move this way, we move with ease and grace. So this week I thought I'd do a series of lessons about how do we prepare ourselves and remember how to use this spiral pattern. And so I talked about three aspects of that, being the flexion extension, the rotation movements, and the sideways movements. And if we can clarify those three planes of action, we can move better and find that spiral. So before you lie down, can you come and either sit or stand? I just want you to turn in one direction and the other. You can do it in sitting, or you can come up to standing. Just turn around yourself and just notice how you're sitting and where you are at the moment. And because we're going to compare this to how you are at the end of the lesson. So you're just turning around yourself and just looking behind you and noticing, is it easier to turn in one direction than the other? You go further in one direction, or does it just feel easier in one direction or more familiar? And just notice a point on the wall somewhere where you're looking behind you, just to have this as a point of reference for the lesson. And what did anyone notice that it was easier turning in one direction?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
What did you notice, Bev?
I've got a tightness in my left back ribs.
Right.
When I go to the left.
Okay. Notice that. Okay. Yeah, so we'll just see how that is at the end of the lesson. And Nu and Tanya, did you notice anything in particular?
You just about the same for me. Legs or our whole body?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And Tanya? Was it easier going one way than the other?
Are you wanting us to turn?
Yes, just turning around. It's just as if you're going to look behind you and just notice how you do that. Yeah. Yeah.
I've been doing that exercise for a long time because of my neck, so it's pretty much even now.
Pretty even. Okay, good. Okay, come and lie on the floor with your just facing the way that you know how to. I don't have to explain to you. You know how to come so that I can see you sideways on the floor. Make sure you stay warm enough lying there on the floor. And just sense how you're giving your weight to the floor. I'll just mute you so that no interference comes on the video. Okay. So just sense how you're giving your weight to the floor. Bev, I can't see you, so I don't know. you might have to just either move your computer down or something just a little bit so that I can. Or move a bit further away or something so that I can. Yeah, still can't see you. You're kind of below the camera. Okay. Yeah, that's better. Okay, so just sense how you're giving your weight to the floor this morning. Now, if you're comfortable with your legs long, that's fine. If you're not, please bend them up. Feel how your feet are touching the floor. Noticing, are your calves touching the floor? If you need any support under your head, have that. Feeling how your thighs are resting on the floor. Yeah, good, Tanya. That's better for you, I think, with it pushing under your head. Sometimes when we lie on our back, the back can arch a lot, and so just having that cushion there under your head just eases your lower back a little bit. Feeling the contact in your buttocks. Noticing the space underneath your waist. And how your shoulders are resting on the floor. Do your lower ribs touch the floor at all? Sensing how your arms align. And feeling the point of contact of your head on the floor. And just very gently turn your head to as if you're going to look to the left, to something on the left of you. And then turn your head and look to something on the right. And just notice how that movement is. And is it just your head that moves, or can you feel any movement further down your spine? So we spoke yesterday about how when a movement is easy and effortless, that our whole body is involved in that movement. The effort's distributed throughout our body. So that even in this movement of turning the head, something happens in your spine. But also we talked about yesterday how we put the brakes on. And so you may not be able to feel so much in the rest of your body, or you may notice that it's easier to turn one way than the other way. And just let that go. And bend up your knees so your feet are flat on the floor, about hip width apart. And very gently, just move your legs a little bit to the left, just a little way, not a huge amount, just a couple of centimeters to the left, and a little bit to the right. And just notice, is there any difference in the way you do that movement? Is it easier to go to the left, or is it easier to go to the right? And as you do that movement, can you feel anything happening in your pelvis? Can you feel that the weight shifts a little bit in your buttocks? So that as you go to the left, the weight gets a little bit heavier on your left buttock. And as you go to the weight lifts a little bit on your right buttock. And as you go to the right, the weight lifts a little bit on your left buttock, and the weight goes further down on the right buttock. And just notice, is one way easier than the other? Does one way feel like you've got the brakes on somewhere? Just notice that movement. And just going very slowly and not a big movement, because the organisation is evident more in the beginning of the movement. Whereas if you do a huge movement, you miss what's actually how you're organised. And as you're doing that movement, can you sense any movement anywhere else in your body. So is anything happening, say, around those lower ribs? Or is anything happening in your breastbone? Or you may even notice some movement further up through your body. And just notice that at the moment without trying to change anything or judging yourself. Often when we start to observe ourselves, we can get very judgmental. So it's just being very kind to yourself. Pay attention to yourself by being kind. Let go all those judgments, leave the past behind. Come on now, surrender your mind. Just let all the tension unwind. So you're just observing yourself and just being curious, like a child might be. Oh, it's easier this way than that way. That's interesting. And just let that go and rest, but keep your knees bent up. Or you can let them go long if you want. If you want to take rest completely with them long, that's fine. And just sensing how you're lying on the floor at the moment. Has that movement made any difference to the way you're lying on the floor? And now bend up your right leg and have your left leg long. And this time, can you keep your knee towards the ceiling? So your right knee is not going to move left or right. It's going to stay towards the ceiling. And can you find a way of lifting that right buttock without taking the knee with you? And notice as you do this, you may need to push through your foot a little bit, or you may be able to do the movement by pressing your left buttock into the floor a bit more. See what happens when you think of that. If you're pressing your left buttock down, does that help you lift the right buttock? Pressing the left buttock down into the floor, lifting the right buttock. And yesterday we talked about the pubic bone. Can you feel the shape the pubic bone makes? That's that bone in your groin, just where your legs meet your pelvis. It's the bottom part of your pelvis. And notice what happens to your belly muscles as you do that. And just rest, but stay in that position. And tighten your belly muscles, like really tighten those lower belly muscles down there where your pubic bone is. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. If you tighten those muscles and do that movement of lifting your pelvis, lifting your pelvis by keeping your knees straight ahead. Feel what happens if you tighten your pelvis, you tighten those tummy muscles. And can you feel it's like moving with the brakes on? So yesterday we talked about how at this time when we are stressed and all the fears are being stirred up about survival fears, about our health and about our finances, we can kind of like get anxious and breathe right up into the top of our chest, but forget about breathing in the lower belly, and this area can get tight. And so what I'm hoping in these classes is that you'll just even start to become aware, even if this is one thing you take away with you, that how do I tighten my belly when I try and do an action or when I'm worried about something? And so what you're learning in these lessons is to wake up to yourself to the fact that when you tighten your belly, you can't move very easily. You've got to just move like with the brakes on, the handbrakes on. And now just let your belly be soft and feel what it's like to push through that press. Or you can either do it a couple of ways. You can press through the foot to lift the right side of your pelvis, or you could think of pressing the left side of your pelvis into the floor and letting your belly be free. And notice as you do that movement, can you feel any movement further up in your ribs? Maybe place your left hand across your body to hold those right ribs. So your left hand, or if you want to hold them with the other hand, that's fine, whichever's easier for you. They're just there for you to just have a sense of your ribs. And notice as you press your foot into the floor, does anything happen to those ribs? Do they lift a little bit off the floor? So your hand is right over to the side of the ribs, Nu. Put your hand over a bit further, over onto the right side of your rib cage. The ribs are, yeah, there, about there. And can you feel that as you lift your pelvis, does anything happen in those ribs? Can you feel any slight movement, a slight lifting of your ribs a little bit off the floor? Yeah, okay. And just let that movement go for a minute. Let's keep your leg up where it is. And now can you place that hand back on those ribs? And this time I want you not to let them move, just to press them down. So your hand might be more on top of the ribs there. So you're not going to let them move. You're going to push them down so that they stay pressed into the floor. And feel what it's like if you push through that, or if you lift the right side of your pelvis and you don't let those ribs move. And can you feel that it inhibits the movement? It makes it harder to do, much more effort required. And you may not even be able to move very far. Well, you probably won't be able to move very far when you push those ribs down. So the ribs are another area where when we get anxious, we tighten in our ribs. And come back to the movement of using your hand to help those ribs to move this time, so that you push through, not to strain yourself, but just remember we talked yesterday about how do I move with pleasure and ease. So you're lifting those ribs. And notice as you lift the right ribs, what happens to the ribs on the left? And could you even think of pressing those, besides pressing the pelvis on the left down into the floor, would you think of pressing the ribs on the left down into the floor more? And notice what happens in your breastbone, how as you lift the right side of your ribs, that your breastbone also slides a little bit to the right, to the left. So our breastbone is something we don't think of. You know, it's our armor plate, and we tighten it here to protect ourselves. And underneath the breastbone are our lungs and our heart, and they're our feeling organs. So when we're anxious and upset, we can just tighten or collapse in the sternum, one of the two. So. And feeling as you do this movement, what's happening in your hip joint itself. It's kind of like an opening that's happening. And as you press, as you lift the right side of your pelvis, your hip joint opens. The angle between your leg and your pelvis gets bigger. And as you bring the leg down, so the coming back to neutral is just as important. In fact, I think more important than the actual movement itself. It's letting everything go. So you're coming back to neutral, letting your ribs settle and your pelvis settle again on the floor. And then pressing through, lifting up the right side of your pelvis again, either by pushing through your right foot or by pressing the left side of your ribs into the floor. And notice where your eyes are looking as you do this movement. So when you move your pelvis like this, your pelvis is going, lifting up on the right side, going towards the left. Can your eyes also look in this direction? And notice what your shoulders do. Is there a way that you can keep your shoulder blades on the floor to do this movement? And just rest, let that go and rest. You can either let your legs come long and rest, or you can bring your legs up. If you feel any tension in your lower back, you could even bring your knees over your chest to release any tension there. In fact, I might get you all to do that. Just bend up your knees and bring your knees over your chest. And just draw your knees a little bit towards you. So you're just easing any tension in your lower back. And you could even just do a little rolling around on your pelvis. Just gentle little movements. And just let that go. And as you bring your legs down, leave your left leg up now and lengthen your right leg. So your left leg stays and your right leg lengthens. The left knee is facing the ceiling and your right leg is long. And keeping the knee facing the ceiling, can you lift this left side of your pelvis? And notice how this movement is compared to the other side. So you can do this a number of ways. You can think of pressing your left foot into the floor. And you could also do the movement by thinking of pressing your right buttock more into the floor. So noticing this movement, just going very gently. And in fact, if it's not as easy this side, just do much less. Just little micro movements. We have a tendency to try and push our body to be the same as the other side, but that just defeats the purpose because everything starts to tighten. So if we have the brakes on somewhere, the slower we go and the more gently we go, the more chance we have of waking our brain up to that fact that there's something holding on somewhere. And feeling as you do that movement, this opening that happens in the hip joint, and noticing if there's any breath in that hip joint. And could you purposely breathe into that left hip joint as you lift that left hip? You're actually creating more space in that joint and in your lower belly there. And then rest in that same position. And now feel what it would be like to tighten that lower belly. You really tighten in your lower belly. And do that same movement of lifting the left side of your pelvis when your lower belly is tightened. And feel what that movement's like. And then release that tightening and let your belly be free. Breathe into that area as you lift the left side of your pelvis and feeling that right side of your pelvis, how it can press more into the floor. And just let that go and rest. Noticing how you're giving your weight to the floor now. Just let your leg come long and rest. Feeling how you're giving your weight to the floor now and noticing, has anything changed? Notice your breathing. Bend up your left knee again. And keep the knee facing the ceiling. Once again, lift up the left side of your pelvis. Thinking of the weight going more towards the right and placing your right hand now across your left ribs. Right hand across the left ribs. And noticing as you lift the pelvis, is there any hint of movement in these ribs? And could you use your hand to actually talk to your ribs and say, let's play. Let's play with this movement of the pelvis. And the ribs on the right side might cooperate as well by pressing more into the floor. So that the ribs on the right side and the pelvis on that side can press more into the floor. And maybe you could look towards the right as well, looking in that direction. And feeling that your belly can be soft, gently pressing through the foot, your belly's soft. And feel the coming back of the movement, letting yourself settle back on the floor. And just rest from that movement. Noticing how you're lying on the floor, feeling your breathing. Bend up your left knee again. Place your right hand on those left ribs. And this time, don't let them move, just stop them moving. And feel what it's like to lift the left side of your pelvis, and you don't let those left ribs move. And notice that when you don't let the left ribs move, the right ribs can't press down into the floor either. They kind of stay up in the air. And then let that go and use your hand just to support those ribs, to help them, encourage them to play, to move. So as you press through the left, as the left buttock lifts, the right side of your pelvis presses down, the ribs on the right press further into the floor, and these ribs on the left can start to lift a little bit. And you may feel the movement of your sternum, your breastbone also moving across to the right. And also let your eyes look across to the right. So you've got everything turning in the same direction. This is what a movement, when it's well organized, is. It's an easy movement. Everything's going together. One part's not sort of going, like the ribs aren't saying, well, I'm going in this direction. And the pelvis is saying, I'm going in this direction. But you have an intention to turn in a particular way, and everything follows that intention. Every part follows that intention. And just let that go and rest. So this is how a baby learns. It has an intention. It wants to reach that toy or that piece of food or something, and its whole body moves towards that. It harnesses everything it has to go towards that object. But in our culture, we have so many complexities as adults and things happening in our lives, especially now with the coronavirus knocking at our doors. We're not sure which way to go, which way to turn. So one part's turning one way, another part's scared and holding back. And as we can come into the present moment and feel our bodies, we have much better chance of staying present and bringing our awareness and attention into our body so that we can then do what we think what we want to do, what we think we're doing. Okay, bend up both of your knees again. So your feet are flat on the floor, about hip width apart. And just very slowly reach up with your right hand towards the ceiling. So you're just reaching it up towards the ceiling and have the palm facing inwards towards your body. So the palm is facing in towards your body. And as you have your arm here, can you feel your shoulder blade is on the floor? And just do a little movement of beginning to lift your arm as if you wanted to reach something a little bit further away from you, just to feel how your shoulder blade starts to lift off the floor. And as you do this, can you begin to turn your palm away from you? So the thumb comes down towards your feet and your palm turns away from you, so that as you're reaching with that arm up, but you're also turning your arm, you're turning your arm at the same time. So your thumb points down towards your feet and your little finger points up towards your head, and your palm is facing away from you. And feeling as you do that, how your shoulder blade can lift. And that as you do the movement this way, your shoulder blade can lift, and you may even feel your ribs starting to move and your breastbone starting to move. So Bev, if you move just down a little bit, I can't see your arms, just so I can see you. Yeah, that's better. So this twisting movement of the arms is part of that spiral pattern that I talked about. Our body's designed to move. And as we move in this way, it reminds our body of its own song, you know, like twinkle, twinkle, little star. The arm would know how to sing, how I wonder what you are. And just let that go, let your arm come and rest again. And notice how your shoulders are lying on the floor. Is there any, can you notice anything, any difference in your shoulders from having done this little movement with your arm? And slowly reach up again with your right arm. And this time, instead of spiraling the arm, instead of twisting it around, can you just keep the palm facing inwards and just lift the arm, like keeping the palm, the thumb and the fingers where they are. And you're just moving the arm. And you'll feel your shoulder blade will lift. But there's not much movement in the sternum and the ribs. And then if you start to twist your hand so that your thumb goes down towards the floor and your pointer and your little finger goes towards the ceiling so that you're spiraling your arm, can you feel more of a connection through you? And as you do the movement that way, you may feel how your shoulder blades lift. The shoulder blade lifts off the floor. And the sternum slides a little bit towards the left. And you may also notice something happening in those ribs on the right. Okay, just let that go, let the arm come down. Feel how you're lying on the floor. This time, bend up your right leg, so your right foot's on the floor. Reach with your right arm towards the ceiling, as we just did. So your right leg is up, your right arm is reaching towards the ceiling. And this time, can you begin the reaching with your hand, reaching your hand up and spiraling it around, turning it around. And you'll feel how the shoulder blade lifts and the ribs lift. And you'll feel that there could come a point when it would help you to reach further by lifting up that right side of your pelvis. Let's see if you can find that movement. So you begin the movement with your arm and your shoulder blade begins to lift, your ribs begin to lift, and you could just then lift the right side of your pelvis, maybe by pushing through your right foot, or you could think of the left side of your body pressing a little bit more into the floor. So the right arm is reaching up, the ribs, the shoulder blade lifts up a little bit off the floor, the ribs begin to move, and the right side of your pelvis can push more into the floor to help those ribs to move and to help you reach a little bit further. And just let that go, but keep your leg up, but let your arm come down, keep your right leg bent. And bring your right arm up in the air again. The same way with the palm facing inwards. And this time, can you begin the movement from your pelvis? So you're lifting the right side of your pelvis, the right side of your rib cage starts to move, and you'll feel a point where you could reach with that left arm up a little bit towards the ceiling. So it's the same movement, except we're beginning it from a different place. And feel that, and you could maybe even turn your head to the left as well. Let your head move to the left. And feeling how the weight gets heavier on that left side of your body, and you can even press that left side of your body more into the floor. And then in the coming back, just letting your pelvis come down first and the shoulder come down last. So it's like just one part moving after the other. So your pelvis lifts and you reach up with your arm, then you let your pelvis come down first, and then let the arm come down. And just imagine something that you're reaching for. You might have a dream that you're reaching for. It might be to just feel good in your body. It might be that you have a business that you're wanting to promote, or it could be wanting peace, or whatever it is, something that you're reaching for and you really want that. And just let that go and rest. Let your legs come long and arms come long and rest on the floor. Feel how you're giving your weight to the floor now. Notice the right side of you and the left side of you. Notice your breathing. Is there any more space for breath in your body? Now bend the left leg, so your foot's standing. And reach up to the ceiling with your left hand, keeping the palm facing inwards to start with. So your left arm is reaching up to the ceiling and your palm is facing inwards. And in keeping the palm facing inwards, just lift and lower your, keeping your arm stays straight, but you're just lifting your shoulder blade up and putting it down and just noticing how that movement is and how far through you that movement's distributed. And then can you reach up with your left arm, but let your arm twist so that the palm starts facing out. Your thumb goes towards your knees and your little finger goes towards your head. So this twisting, spiraling movement allows not only your shoulder blade to move, but your ribs and your sternum to move. Feeling as you do this how the breastbone and sternum moves across towards the right and the ribs on the right get closer to the floor. And just letting your head turn with your arm. So as you might want to just take your glasses off, Bev. I didn't notice you had them on before. And feeling how as your arm lifts and you might feel your shoulder lift and your sternum lift and your ribs move, and you may even feel the weight shift in your pelvis a little bit. The weight could go a little bit over to that right side. And just have a little rest, let your arms come long and rest. Let your leg go long. Sensing how you're giving your weight to the floor now. Noticing if anything's waking up in your body. You're breathing, a little bit more space inside of you, giving yourself room to move. It's actually, that saying is very relevant really. When we're stressed, we tighten everything, we haven't got any room inside of us to move. Bend up your left knee again. Bring your left arm up towards the ceiling. And this time, reach with that left arm towards the ceiling, letting the arm spiral around. And this time, you'll get to a certain point when you won't be able to go any further. Could you push through that? Could you lift up that left side of your pelvis to help that movement? And from the navel, and then come back down with the pelvis first and then the ribs, then your arm. So you lift first with your arm, and then the pelvis lifts. And this time we're going to come back with the pelvis, and the shoulder comes back down. So one follows the other. So the arm lifts, then the ribs move, and the shoulder blade moves, the ribs move, the sternum moves, the weight shifts onto the right side of your ribs, and you push through the left foot, or think of the weight lifting up the left side of your pelvis by pressing the right pelvis side of your pelvis into the floor, and then come back, letting the pelvis come down first, keeping your arm in the air until the pelvis has come down as much as it can, then letting the arm come down. And see if you can find the playfulness in that movement, the lovely sensuous movement. Letting your body just play like a child does. Learning to move with ease and grace. First, let's slow down the pace. Getting in touch with the feelings within, all struggle and effort erase from your face. Yes, you can move with ease. Follow your instincts if you please. How you did move with joy when you were a little girl or boy, spiraling with such grace. Of effort there was no trace. You knew how to self-assert, how to move without any excess work. Okay, so next time you do the movement, you could let the pelvis lead the movement. Well, actually, I'll give you a rest first. Have a little rest. Sorry, I get carried away. Let's have a little rest. And sense how you're resting on the floor. So in these lessons, it's following your own timing. If I keep you going too long, you teach me by resting, and I get to see, it's getting too much, so I need to give them a rest. It's learning to discern what's comfortable and what's a strain or a stress. What's pleasurable, and when does that movement become an effort? So we're so much used to pushing ourselves, making ourselves do something. That sometimes that works, and sometimes it causes us extra stress, and we need to kind of like rewind and go back and find, well, where was I efforting? What wasn't I including in the movement? And how can I wake up to more of myself to find a movement that's easy and pleasurable? Bend up your left leg again and reach with your left arm towards the ceiling. And this time, can you begin the movement from your pelvis? So you press through your, so you've got you're lifting up the left side of your pelvis, and then reaching with your left arm, and then let the arm come down. So the arm comes down first, the pelvis stays in the air, and then the pelvis comes down. So this is actually the walking pattern. So you're reaching up with your pelvis first, and then your arm, and the arm comes down, and your pelvis comes down. And what can you soften? What can be easy? And then the pelvis, reaching up the pelvis first. So when you reach with the pelvis, your shoulder stays on the floor. And then your shoulder comes down and the pelvis comes up, your shoulder comes up. That's it, Tanya. And the shoulder comes down and the pelvis comes down. And then rest on the floor before you start the next movement. And when you're ready to go again, lifting up the pelvis first and the shoulder. And now, can you let the pelvis come down? Let the pelvis come down. And then the shoulder. And just play with any combination you like. You can start wherever you can lift your pelvis first, or you could lift your shoulder first, and whichever one you want to come down first, just playing and feeling. This creates this beautiful movement through the middle of you and those middle rib area. Just letting your head roll wherever it wants to go. So we probably, the way you're rolling, let your head roll as well. And just play with that while you're happy doing that and it feels good. And then just rest. So I'll let you tell me when you want to rest this time. And sensing how you're giving your weight to the floor. Just thinking of the word sensuous, it's from feeling our sensations. And I think this kind of a lesson is this lovely serpentine kind of sensuous movement. And people who have that sensuous quality are in touch with their sensations. And that's what we're developing in these classes, sensing, feeling the sensations in your body. And waking up those parts that have been asleep, so include more of you in the movement. So as we get older, it's learning to move smarter, not harder, by including more of ourselves and waking up to ourselves. Okay, just have a rest now and let yourself feel how you're lying on the floor, how you're giving your weight to the floor now. Noticing the left side and the right side. Is it the same as it was in the beginning or different? Noticing your breathing. And very gently, when you're ready, just bend up your knees and roll to your side. And see if you can keep that nice quality of ease, and thinking that as you come up to sitting, that you're going to be doing this turning and spiraling movement. From what we've learned in this lesson, can you include more of yourself as you do that movement? And then come up to standing. Or if you were sitting in the first place, if you were, we're just going to go back to this little movement that you did. So if you had it, if you started that movement in sitting, you could stay there for the minute. So were you sitting, Bev, Tanya, to start with, or were you standing? I can't remember. I just unmute you. Okay, and just in sitting or standing, just doing that little movement. We're just feeling your feet, first of all, sensing your organisation. So come into that same position you were in, Tanya, yeah, just so that we have a frame of reference to start with, and then we'll come up to standing. Yeah. And just very gently, just turn in one direction and turn in the other. And notice the parts of you that are moving now. And is there something that has shifted, that's changed? So you may notice that the movement's easier or smoother, or that you can turn a bit further. Or you may be aware of part of your body moving that wasn't moving before, or that you didn't even know wasn't moving until we did this lesson. So if you think in the lesson, we did these little movements of the pelvis. So can you think as you're turning that one buttock's moving forward, one's moving back. And then we did the movements with the shoulders, one shoulder moving forward and one moving back. And then we connected these into the middle. So one side of your rib cage is moving in one direction forward and one's moving back. So your whole body is turning and your eyes are looking. Whole body's turning. And then if you're sitting down on the floor, just come up gently to standing. And do those little movements of turning in one direction and turning in the other, feeling how your pelvis turns, how your shoulders can turn, and how your ribs can move in the middle of you. And just stand and rest for a moment. And can you feel in this movement we had one part of the body going one way and one the other? Remember that? I remember when I was at school we had this, chubby checker and let's twist again, where like one part of your body's going in one direction and one's going in the other. Could you kind of feel that you could turn your pelvis in one direction and your shoulders in the other direction, and your pelvis in the other direction and your shoulders in the opposite direction? And then as you take your pelvis back and your shoulder forward, could you reach across your body to touch the opposite knee? Reach across your body and even lift up the leg a little bit. You're sort of touching, if I can come sideways, touching the opposite knee, reaching. Move through your bones and you move without pain. Move through your bones and you move without strain. Your muscles will be free to work in harmony when you move right through your bones. And you feel those ribs in the middle of you moving. One's twisting, just only going where it's easy for you to move. Then if you take this into walking, this is actually part of the walking pattern. We don't actually put our arms across like this, but they certainly move, and the shoulders move a little bit. So we have this nice twisting through the middle of you when you're walking. Move through your bones. So just go for a little walk and you feel very light. Move through your bones and you won't be uptight. Your muscles will be free to work in harmony when you move right through your bones. Move through your bones and you'll feel very tall. Move through your bones and you'll know how to fall. Your muscles will be free to work in harmony when you move right through your bones. Pom, pom. Okay, let's come back and have a little seat and we'll have a little chat about how you went in the lesson. Just put yourself so I can see you somewhere, and I can't see your head, Bev.
Yeah, gotta get up.
Yeah, I just want to see your face now so I can talk to you.
Yeah.
So,
That's good. Thank you.
How was that for you, Bev? How was that?
Good. Yeah, I found a bit of a niggle in my right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was when I was going to both sides, but
Yes.
I realised I had to drop my ribs a bit more, and that stopped it.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say that when in the lesson I was watching you, and I saw that as you lifted those ribs on the left that were a bit niggly before, if you can even put a little cushion underneath those right ribs when you do that movement, what that'll do is you've got something to support you.
Oh, yes. Okay.
So that you come back down. And so when you lift the left side of your ribs and the right ribs can press down into the floor,
better.
They can let go.
Okay.
Yeah. Or even if you put your hand there as you're doing it, sort of like you're turning like that, this hand's taking you one way, but this one's kind of, you're pressing into the back of that hand. Yeah.
Yeah.
Up you.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, good. Thank you.
Yeah. Tanya, how did you go?
Very well, thank you. Yes, once again, I really love that.
Yes.
And I'm surprised that my left shoulder, which does usually cause me a lot of pain and so on, it was quite happy doing what we did today.
Yes, you look very, like at the end, like you're playing, and you look like a little kid kind of doing those little movements. You'll see it on the video when I send it to you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Nanu, how about you? I can't see your
I
face.
think I feel freer.
Can you come a bit closer or turn the camera up? I can't see your face.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Oops.
Yes, I feel freer.
Better. Do feel freer. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good. Yeah. It's a great lesson for getting that movement through the middle, that when we get stressed, the ribs get really, like there's a diaphragm in here, which is like a mini trampoline. It's part of that sphincter action, and it gets very tight. You know, when we get stressed, we hold our breath, that area gets tight. So doing any of these movements, you know, the hula hoops, you ever had them when you were a kid?
Yeah. Yeah.
They're great sort of moving, that feeling of that movement through there.
Mm.
And the lesson we're going to be doing tomorrow is more addressing the ribs, how they move. We're looking at the lateral, the sideways flexion movements. Okay.
Okay. Good.
Hmm.
That's lovely. Thank you very much again.
Yeah, pleasure. Yeah. So I'll
Nice.
send you this lesson and the notes with it and the recording, and then tomorrow we'll be doing some more with them. But yeah. Any questions before you go?
No, I don't think so.
Yep. Okay. We'll
Thank
see you all tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Bye.
Au revoir.
Thanks, everyone. Bye, Nu. Bye, Tanya.
Bye.